Hi, and welcome to Real Trail Talk. I am Donovan D'Souza from The Long Ways Better.
And I'm Mike Pybus from The Life of Pi. Welcome to episode 83. We are back on the Munda Biddi doing Northcliffe to Walpole, and joining us in the new renovated studio is Brad Serls from Cycles Bespoke. Welcome, Brad.
Hey, guys.
So Brad is a two-time Munda Biddi end-to-ender and obviously works at Cycles Bespoke. Do you want to give us a little bit of a background about yourself, your mountain biking experience, and your connection with the Munda Biddi?
Yeah, my connection starts back in 2014. I was working at Wembley Cycles at that point and had started seeing a few riders start talking about the Munda Biddi. Had good connections with Peter Versleurs, who was on the foundation board right from the start of the Munda Biddi, and watched him go off, I think in 2012, and do the first orchestrated end-to-end, and once it had finished its completion. So I always knew that it was there, and during 2014 I'd noticed that my shift from, I guess, cyclocross road and mountain biking kind of stuff I started finding all of this bike packing stuff that had started to rear its head up through social media and on the Radivist and through Instagram and stuff like that, and got pretty interested, and asked my wife Kiri, would she mind if I disappeared for 2 weeks, and tried to do an end-to-end. My sister had sadly passed away the year before, and I needed a little bit of a personal challenge to kind of like find myself out there, and I thought it was perfect. We did raise money for Beyond Blue that year and raised $12,500
Wow.
doing that end-to-end. Going back to 2015 and seeing what the Facebook page looked like for the Munda Biddi, and especially the website, looking at the website now and how much information you can actually pull from those two sources. All I had to work with was a list of where was to get the best sausage rolls and baked goods.
Important information.
Very important information, and it's information I still give away to these days.
Yeah.
I absolutely hated that end-to-end, which also means that I loved it as well. I love a good challenge. I love some Type 2 fun. I love carrying too much gear, which is exactly what I did on that fest trip. I was basically going in green, had been making 6 or 7 visits to Paddy Pallin to work out, I know everything about bikes, but how the hell do I actually sleep in the wilderness?
Yeah.
What am I doing? What do you mean that it's going to get to -2 degrees? So yeah, that trip was absolutely amazing, and thoroughly enjoyed it. In a sense, I got hit by a 1 in 100 year storm going into Nannup, which was a bit of an eye-opener when you've got 30 people messaging you saying, hey, you need to get off the trail. And I did just that and got to stay in a shelter for a day. And then the second front followed me all the way down to Albany, which was great. And it was an awesome trip. The best part of that trip was finishing it up and being able to travel to the United States. Went over there for a month to photograph a friend's wedding, but spent an awful lot of personal time visiting bike shops on the West Coast, and seeing all those bike shops start to shift into bikepacking mode. Was just awesome, being in shops and getting told that we're closing half an hour earlier, and you walk outside and there's 20 guys fully loaded waiting to ride over the Golden Gate Bridge and go camping for the evening. That kind of vibe was amazing, and a part of things that I wanted to start bringing back to Perth. And that's when I came across Chris at Cycles Bespoke, and he was telling me about the latest Surly karate monkeys that were coming out, and I was like, oh my God, I've heard so much about these Surlies, and seeing the stuff that Chris had in the store was all the stuff that I was finding throughout the States. And it was a really, really good place for me to kind of get into and start up a small community here in Perth, and it's something that we did. We started up with coffee outside, so people meeting up once a month, showing people how to make coffee with all their camp gear and get used to carrying stuff on their bike, and showing them how easy it was to carry stuff on their bike. I think it was in the shop for about a year and a half. Chris went off to do his first Munda Biddi end-to-end, and I couldn't bear it. I had Lewis Cedar was about to set off and do his Tour Divide record that year, and I know I needed to be out on the trail, so I thought it was time to do south to north, and headed out there with a 1 in 100 year storm front following me out of Albany, which was amazing. Pretty scary when it takes the power out of 3 towns that you're actually going through, and you're hoping to get food and supplies and stay in accommodation from those towns, but nobody can take your money because there's no power in the towns. That was quite interesting. That was a fast end-to-end. Well, faster than what I thought. I had Lewis's updates on my phone every day, seeing that he was getting closer and closer to actually having a chance at coming first. And it was one of those things in the back of my mind that kind of like, all right, what happens if I pick up pace? What happens if I skip this hut and get myself to a town and stay in accommodation instead? It was quite interesting. And from that kind of spurred on that whole packing lighter. What can I do to make this more enjoyable from a riding sensation? But at the same time, still having my routes of, I will put a fold-up chair, will put a coffee table on my bike, I will carry way too much beer for me and my friends. I do love that. Yeah. Having that background of knowing that a bike can carry too much stuff. So now I kind of have settled in really nicely with Chris at Cycles Bespoke. We help, I'd probably say anywhere between about 20 to 30 people a week dip their toes into the Munda Biddi. I love being a part of that little family that is Perth people pushing Munda Biddi.
What I'm learning from that is don't go riding with Brad because you'll get 100-year storm.
Or what most of my friends end up saying is, if Brad says that there's a good view, it means that there's a dumb hill in front of it, and we'll end up carrying our bikes.
Oh, that's always the case. So Donovan and I gave our thoughts on Northcliffe in the last episode. What do you think of this kind of tiny little, it's not even a timber town anymore, it's kind of just an out of the way place in WA?
Easily with Northcliffe as a town, if you've been to the pub, they do the best mixed grill on the trail. Mixed grill, you probably know it from Pemberton. Pemberton took it off the menu because Northcliffe kicked their butts in doing it. Sorry for all the vegetarians out there. But a mixed grilled is basically the who's who of animals that are around the Northcliffe area on a plate. If you're trying to reach your calories for the day, this is definitely the best way to go.
Awesome.
The general store's perfect in there for restocking. The pub's great. The accommodation there is great. And if you're trying to do a bit of a stealth camp, the footy oval has the nice little awning if you just want to pitch your sleeping bag underneath there. I really dig it. I love that entrance into when you're heading south, when you're coming into Northcliffe, where you go through that farmer's property and you think that you're trespassing, and then you start running along the river, and it's a really, really special little entrance into what is a really, really valuable town on the Munda Biddi.
All right, so heading south, so this is a double campsite stretch all the way to Walpole, so 3 kind of sections, and the first one is off to Yirrakata, which is 50 kilometres, and it's just a really weird mix of farms, forests, and kind of vehicle tracks is the theme through here, but exiting town, thankfully, not as painful as leaving on the bib. Probably because you're on a bike and you cover more distance.
Yeah, I mean, the bib has that, that really sandy bit that sort of is near the river but with no river views, whereas this is sort of on roads, sort of through through farmland and through like back blocks. And I think it starts out okay, but this is not a great day overall.
I actually don't mind the farm
Yeah.
bit here because there's trees on the road that you're going along, and it just feels like bike touring.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I think some of the days up the northern section, it just feels like you're in the forest the whole time. And as much as I don't like land clearing in WA, it's nice to go by some of those farms, especially in the winter, springtime.
I had like a great thing where like an eagle flew over me and in front and then veered to the right. And it was like, wow, that's one of those things where you can't really capture that with a camera as it's happening, but would have been awesome. So I mean, to start with, I don't think it's bad, but then it gets a bit boring. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do like those sections that it's like you've got 15, 20 minutes, half an hour in tight packed bush, and then you come out and doing that first thing in the morning is amazing because as the sun's coming up, you've just got these glimmers of light and you get through these dewy meadows and the sun's coming up and you're trying to take a photo and you're getting blinded by the sun continually as you meander through the fields. I love that section past Fenrook Falls as well, which is you would be dropping down, heading south, drop down to Fenrook Falls. And if the falls are flowing in the middle of winter, then that's absolutely amazing.
Just off the track, there is Lanepool Falls in this particular section before Yurakata in Burrara Gardner National Park. Do you guys know if is there parking there for bikes?
At the actual, because it's a side trip, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not far because one of the things I've often said is this is a great trail to do like an explore and just take some side trips off to go and see things. But I'm pretty sure that when I went there wasn't anywhere I could really park up.
No, but having walked it, you could ride along the trail to a certain point and just leave your bike. And then just walk down to the falls. Yeah. Did you guys visit that when you were going through?
No.
Not as I've been doing it, but I've done it like separately.
Yeah, because we got to the bottom of the hill of the road that goes up there, and Aaron was just like, "No, my riding one." He's just like, "I don't care how big that hill is. I don't like the look of it." And we'd started quite late anyway in the day, so that was going to be another little side adventure.
Yeah,
it's worth taking, but it is a 5-kilometer return walk to the falls.
Yeah.
So
if you've got the time, like I had terrible weather, like it was gonna really be bucketing down, so I was not in the mood to go and do a side trip. But one thing I'll say before we move on is that near the falls and the Burrara tree is why it's called Burrara Gardner National Park. If anyone's doing an electric end to end, there's a place called Canterbury Cottage, which is located not far from the Burrara tree. And I think that's been used by a fair few people just to get you a little bit beyond Northcliffe, because this section from Northcliffe to Walpole is one of the pinch points if you're doing an electric end-to-end, because there's not a lot of refuel points along the way. So something to keep in mind if you're doing this section.
Yep. So from there's actually really, really nice carry forest because you dip down towards the Canterbury River. And I just remember just being in awe because the carry forest through here is pretty fantastic considering the fires that went through in 2015. But yeah, it's just like big, thick boys, nice canopy. And because most of it's downhill leading into that section, it's probably more enjoyable north to south.
But it's very straight, which I find a bit frustrating.
Yes, because what is it? It's Dean Road? That you run for like 12 Ks and it's just up and downs and yeah.
What do you think of that section, Brad?
I'm trying to remember it I don't remember in 2015. I definitely remember it in 2017 coming the other way. And that was a July end to end and it was so cold that morning that I had to take my gloves off and stick my little fingers in my mouth to try and warm them up.
What time in 2015 did you do it? Because was that before the fires?
No, it was after the fires.
Fires were Feb that year.
Okay. That was that ultimately that blew my mind. Just getting into that area for the first time. It was like 2015, straight after the fires, and seeing, just putting my bike up against a tree and just walking further and further back to get it into framing for my camera to take it, and just going, what was here beforehand? Like, what did this actually look like? I'm 12 months too late to actually work this all out. And just getting up to the hut, and the difference between seeing the foliage come back was just, the view was incredible, but it was also so scary at the same time to just try and imagine the level of heat that had gone through this place.
So I was also having a hard time remembering this section. I had to look back at my photos just because it is like, it's same kind of, it's mixed forest, and then you're kind of in a sandy area, and then it's more mixed forest. It kind of goes on for quite a while, and it doesn't really get better until you're actually at the hut itself. Yeah,
it's a really disorienting campsite to get to. Like, when you enter it, you kind of enter that ring road that almost goes around it, and you feel like you're just going in a loop, like in a maze.
Yeah.
And then you get up to the top and you're like, oh, what is this? And you put your bike up and you start looking at the hut, and you're like, it's all right. And then you notice that granite rock, and you're just like, I wonder if I can make it up the top before the sun goes down. Then the first thing you check when you get to the top, do I have mobile reception? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Check Instagram quickly, call my wife. The last end-to-end I did, I got to that hut and I was like, wicked. I'm looking forward. I've been rained on the entire day, and a couple they both had trailers, and they'd set up 2 tarps either side of the actual hut itself to close the hut off. I'm just like, oh, glad I got my hammock here. I don't have to go into the bush. They're like, oh, we'll change, we'll pull it down, and they kind of like pulled stuff back, and they just basically emptied a whole household worth of goods into this hut. And it's like, you guys are one of those couples that we hear about. Here.
Were you? Did you have it to yourself? Or did you have other people there, Mark?
Yeah, this was. Yeah, we only stayed with people on, I want to say 2 nights. But yeah, this one we had all to ourselves. But yeah, that ring road, because my buddy Aaron was ahead, and then he had his app on the phone where he could check where he was, and he figured out he could just cut from one road in and go, back out the way you'd go the next day. And it was raining, and I'm doing this ring road. I'm riding quite fast. I was like, why have I not seen Aaron yet? I hadn't caught up to him. And yeah, he was already at the hut because he'd figured out this little shortcut. But yeah, it's a cool little section, little switchbacks leading up to the hut. And I kind of knew from Donovan's post that the granite rock was there. And it's just, we got an epic sunset, rainbows everywhere, and then the skies cleared so I could get some shots of the Milky Way. Looking west. It was one of those nights that's like this is why we do it.
Yeah. Is it, between you two, is it the best hut with the best views?
It'd be top 5 easily, but I don't know if it's the best.
Yeah, I would probably say it's probably top 2 or 3 for me.
I think the side trip is pretty special. That makes it really awesome. The views are great. There's, you get phone reception, which is nice. I think if before the fire, it would be a definite top 2 for me. But looking at, you see some trees that are not the best. So
yeah.
But it's a great site, I think.
Yeah. Were you there before the bushfires and see what the old hut used to look like?
No, I've seen what the photos of the bush looked like before it was burnt, because it's not bad now, but you can tell that the trees, basically got right up to it.
Yeah.
So before that, it would have looked, I think pretty special.
Yeah, definitely. From a hut point of view, I do like that hut. I think it's really, really well designed, being basically that and the hut that was south of Dwelling Up. They would be the latest additions hut wise. Yeah, they would. So they're the two last huts that were built on the trail.
Okay.
Yeah, stunning spot. And if you feel like you got dead legs and you don't want to do the climb, just do the climb. Just suck it up and get up there.
It's not far, you know. It's easier than Mount Chance.
Yeah, which is a very similar campsite on the Bib.
Yeah.
But I mean, apart from seeing some pine plantations around, like I love that view of just there's nothing there but nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it's staring out across like Mount Franklin area, like, well, that's my next day. And just getting excited to be like, I'm riding through that.
And you can see some of the plains that will be part of your next day as well, which kind of, you know, was a nice sort of way of being able to get a preview of what's to come.
Yeah. That's great call.
And this is the first hut going north to south since before Donnybrook. So like you're back into the wilderness and not town to town sections. So that also adds to the specialness. Yeah. All right. Day 2 or section 2 from here. So Yurikata to Quakralup Bila. So this is either 45 Ks if you go straight there, or there is the side trip up to Mount Franklin, which adds about 14 Ks to your day. And a lot of hill climbing as well. So leaving Yurikata, again, you're on those vehicle tracks, but it doesn't take long for you to kind of shift into another gear, so to speak, and get that awesome scenery that we were just talking about.
Yeah, it really does feel like you're on another planet rolling through there. And almost like some council came through and laid down a fresh bike path for you as well.
Yeah, the trail is like really good quality through the... I mean, it's sometimes a bit overgrown through the plains, but the actual trail itself is awesome.
Yeah. Heaps of drainage in all the right places. So many photo spots. I think that for that area it took me like 40 minutes to get through. Just being rained on all day, get to there and it cleared. I'm like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Taking heaps of photos here.
Yeah, because I guess like you couldn't have the Pinja up plane style that you would on the Bib on a bike, because
that would be awful.
You'd be pushing a 25 to 30 kilo bike through puddles that are knee deep. Wouldn't be very fun. So I guess the raised trail kind of is a necessity here.
It's quite similar to in Tasmania on the Frenchman's Cap. They've done this where they've built this quite hard compacted thing with drainage through the trail. And it just makes walking through these sort of muddy, flooded sort of areas that much nicer. And on a bike, all the more so than if it was hiking.
Yeah. And then, kind of you're going between these open plains and little kind of, I call them islands of forest towards Southwest Highway. And then it's just a very long kind of devious little uphill downhill section through the forest all the way to Fernhook Falls.
I love this area. I love this whole day. Like, this would be in my top 3 days of the whole trail. But I love the fact that there's so much just fast down through here. You know, some of the hills you have to earn it. But the fast downs are just awesome. Like, there's just times where I just completely just abandon the brakes and just shoot down the hill.
Oh, that just brought back a horrible memory.
Sorry.
And share it with us.
There was first end to end. A lot of rain. Been wet all day. That whole section around the turnoff to Mount Franklin, the foliage hadn't been cut back and it would collect water and hang on the trail. So even though it wouldn't rain, you just get absolutely drowned.
Yeah.
And I think just before I got to Mount Franklin, my father-in-law met me on the trail, and he was helping with a bit of food. I was going to stay at the campsite that night, and he's like, "Oh, do you need your USB battery pack charged?" I was like, "Yeah, do anything. I haven't been able to charge it." I plugged it into the car. He didn't turn the ignition on, so you can see what happens in the end of that story. And I'd been trying to get enough charge to get my phone working so I could call my wife, because I hadn't spoken to her for a couple of days. And it started bucketing down, and I was like, "Sorry, John, got to go." Pulled the battery pack. He tried to start the car. It wouldn't start. And he's like, just get going, just ride. And I started bombing down that hill to that campsite, and my phone was going intermittent back into reception with my wife trying to call me, so I could hear in my headphones that she was trying to call. And I was just holding on for dear life going down those hills with just like mud and water and everything spraying everywhere. And I was like, this is amazing. This is so terrible at the same time.
I feel like this section, while, as I said, one of the best sections, there's a tragedy for everyone here, because you had your own problems in this, and I had problems in this section.
This was just like a comedy of errors day for me. But one thing, like, opposite to you guys is, I think some trees had fallen over the track like a week or so prior, and DBC had gone in to cut them down and shift them off the track. But what they've done at the same time is gone, oh, it's a little overgrown here, we'll just cut it back.
Yeah.
And they've got like, I don't know, mechanical, so they've probably got like brush cutters, but then they've left everything in the middle of the track.
Oh, fun.
So, like, I'm not joking, like, at least a couple of dozen times this day, I'm stopping to pull sticks and twigs and leaves out of my rear derailleur. Like, every time it would just be, like, jammed. You're like, stop, pull it out. It was just like, come on, guys. Like, I appreciate the effort, but at the same time, like, it would have been much easier just to carry my bike over a couple of trees than it would be to stop a couple of dozen times.
The second time I did this, I snapped a spoke through the section because of all the twigs, and that was not long before you did. You would have gone through, so I think they must have done the work already.
Yeah.
Not good.
But I mean, beautiful forest. I've got really annoyed at one point because like the downs here just seemed like they were very quick and rapid, and then you were immediately back into an uphill that seemed like a slog. It's like, just even them out a little bit so like, you can cruise, not just like, full bottle down the hills.
Yeah. I definitely felt that the first time I did this, because I did this proper bike packing, that was the section that you did a day with me, on an acoustic bike, fully loaded, and I did this section like that. Second time I did it with an electric, and I was like, yeah, this is great. Who cares?
Yeah.
That is the biggest question that I get asked in the shop. Everyone's like, oh, the top section's just like really hilly and stuff, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, the bottom section's just as hilly.
Yeah.
It's just got a different frequency to it.
Yeah.
The hills are so much bigger as you get past Pemberton. But the frequency of the hills up here are they're brutal, but they're so close together.
And the pea gravel up here doesn't help.
Of course.
Yeah. The big disaster I had here was I didn't eat properly on this day, and I had had too much like short burst sugar sort of fixes rather than proper food. And I didn't carry enough with me because my wife was running support and was bringing things for me. I was like, I'll be fine. I don't need lunch. And then I did the hillside trip up to Mount Franklin and just hit the wall, and knew that I had to get there because my wife was there with food while just having no energy. And this was just the worst experience of the whole track, because I just had no energy. I would stop, have to like just break for a bit and then keep going. And my wife realized after a while that there was something wrong. But it was like I was literally 500 meters from the car park before she realized. Yeah, so. Yeah.
The whole trail's got that kind of built into it where you're like, I've got this much water, I've got this much food, I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to pick that up. And as you start getting into that, yep, cool, I can do 50. Yep, cool, I can do 60. There's some sections that are the same distance, but it just takes it out of you so much more. Yeah. And it's not even a factor of hills. I reckon it's a good factor of how many trees have fallen on the trail. But it's so you can never ever pick the kind of day that you're actually going to have. You can never predict it.
And a lot of it's mental too. Like, I enjoyed leaving Walpole, and I'm probably skipping ahead here, but like I knew that was going to be hilly, and that was in the back of my mind. And I was just like, at the end of it, I was like, it was fine. It was just like I wasn't looking forward to those hills as I built it up so much.
Yeah.
Whereas like this section, because it's a giant hill, like from the highway up to Mount Franklin's a few hundred meters vertically. But it is over such a long distance that like it doesn't seem so bad while you're doing it, and you can kind of like cruise around and not really worry. And there's the stop at Fernhook Falls, which is just wonderful.
Mm.
I don't understand why there's a summer diversion that takes you away from there. Why not just go through Fernhook Falls all the time?
Other bit's kind of cool as well. I've done both now, and I think Fernhook is better because you get to see the falls. But I guess if it's not really flowing, then what's the point? And the other way, you kind of cross the creek itself. So that's probably like a cool thing that you can do that's a bit different.
Yeah.
And there's like a little sort of secret camping spot that's not far from the crossing as well. That looks really nice.
Well, I mean, an option there is if you want to break this up into 2 days, is ride all the way to Fernhook Falls and camp there, because you can. It's a car camping spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, really beautiful spot, but unfortunately in the news for all the wrong reasons recently. Yeah, that poor kid that drowned there. But I mean, yeah, beautiful spot, even if you're just a car camper. Just you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's these beautiful falls. Good walk trail around there.
Good point that getting asked day trips, like getting asked about what are good day trips. Like imagine that, camping overnight at Fernhook Falls and then riding up to the top of Mount Franklin for a day and then turning around and not having to do a whole end to end. Imagine how enjoyable that would be.
What do you mean with a not fully loaded bike?
Carrying an unloaded bike up to the top of Mount Franklin.
Yeah, and then leaving Fernhook Falls, is that just very gradual climb, but it's through nice lush forests and then you pop out onto the plains again. And this was a spot where I was just wow, looking around, you can see all the hills, you've got the king ears everywhere, there's wildflowers out. It's just a beautiful spot in WA.
That second lot of the plains I think is even nicer than the first lot, and for me, and the first time I did it, the sky was just super dramatic at the time, so like all the photos just look awesome through the section. I love it.
And then getting towards Mount Franklin, you got those switchbacks and there's that hill that kind of never ends, and I was just because I'd shot off ahead of Aaron because I was going to do the side trip up, and I was just switchback, another hill. Then I took a wrong turn. You reached the first major road through there, and I turned left because I'd got a little disorientated. I didn't check the map properly. Went down like a kilometre, hadn't seen a marker and thought, I'd better check the map again. Required going back up a hill. And then you get to Mount Franklin Road. And I didn't quite check the map properly here, realising that the turn off for the Munda Biddi, if you want to go up, is down that road a little bit. Down the trail. So I dumped all my gear here by a carry tree, so I could do the climb up. And it was the descent down Mount Franklin Road. I'm like, I'm going to have to go back up this again. It was adding another 60 metres of vert to the day, which wasn't fun, but yeah, you learn. But I mean, the side trip, definitely worth doing, considering this is a short campsite to campsite day.
That view into the Walpole wilderness is just outstanding.
I still haven't done the side trip. I'm feeling pretty lonely listening to you guys at the moment.
You're going to go again, so...
Yeah. It's not faster, so I should be able to get a big one.
Yeah. I mean,
how much of that can you... From the Munda Biddi, how much of that can you ride to Mount Franklin? Or is it basically stop straight away?
If you're just going to go to the lookout, because there's you can climb to the top, and you can get pretty close to the top. Just before the stairs, really, if you wanted to ride up there. But the lookout into the wilderness is really, you could ride all the way there. So
cool.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out, because again, if you think Yirrakatta's got good views, Mount Franklin's just next level.
Yeah.
I got to the top, and actually no, sorry, I got to the top and then back down. I rang my girlfriend to say I was fine, and there was this really obese family that I'd seen at the car park, and I'd done the full loop around, and then they were just getting to the base of the climb, and they seen me hot and sweaty, and I'm just this is on top of a 60-kilometer day bike riding, and they're just looking at me, just not computing, what are you doing? Yeah, I mean, worth it. I was stuffed at this point and just looking forward just to getting into camp. And luckily, as you said before, this is just a downhill section for the most part into camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so relieved after the hell of trying to ride up to Mount Franklin, having had no energy, just being able to just fly all the way to camp.
So, such a good downhill road.
Yeah.
So good.
There's like one little like bit where you go up, but it's like like half a kilometer, and then it's just like whoosh, straight to camp.
Yeah. No, I had to check the map again because I was like, before I go down this downhill, I want to make sure that I haven't missed like some secret turn off into camp.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, but it's one of those campsites. Like even before I started the Munda Biddi, I was like, this is one that I want to spend time at and really enjoy because like being almost on the banks of the Franklin River, it's just one of those special spots. Definitely worth I think it's about 500 meters, the side trip down to the river.
Yep.
And just nice granite platform, flowing river, just beautiful.
The 2 times I've been there, that the trail down to it has been so overgrown that I actually haven't been able to get to a clearing.
Oh, right.
Or gotten so far in and just going, all right, I don't know where I am. That was a long time ago, so it sounds like they fixed that up, and I'll add that to next year's trip.
Yep.
Well, when I arrived, I noticed there was a ute parked up, and it was the maintenance volunteers. Thankfully, it wasn't car campers going through there. So that section down to the river and around the campsite either side has been well maintained as of September this year.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a lovely campsite. It's one of my favorites as well of the track, along with Yurikata.
So leaving Quackaralop-Beela, it's a very short day into Walpole. It's only about 30 k's, but you do have a couple of hills that kind of kick you around a little bit. The first one leading up to Swarbrick on North Walpole Road.
Yeah, pretty rough.
Because it's not a bad hill. It's big and it's long, and you've got one particular section that's just really, really steep. And that's in the morning sun. I just said, yep. I'm getting off my bike and I'm walking through here.
Yeah, the bit from there's a farm property with a lot of really fancy looking cows up until Underhill Road, which I remember because of Lord of the Rings. That bit there is pretty full on. I remember getting to the top of it and I wanted to do the whole thing on the bike, and I just got to the top and went, I'm screwed. I just need to stop and rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brad, doing it both ways, which way is the better way?
I reckon both of them has their insults to injury. Definitely heading out of Walpole and seeing this hill for the first time, it's probably the most, what's the word for it? It just feels like a giant. You come around a corner and you just see this big hill and you see that you're going to have to carry all of your gear that I've told you not to put on your bike in the shop 3 times already. You're carrying all this gear up this big hill and you're thinking, why did I put 4 litres of water on my bike today when there's a river on the other side I could stock up? Whereas the other way, you're screaming into a town that has a pub in it. I think that's answered my question.
Pub.
Yeah. And reaching the top, you get the reward of the Swarbrick Art Loop, which is a cool little 200, 300 meter little walk trail art installation in the forest. I think it was a response to the logging in the area that they decided to commemorate it, because otherwise really no one would visit here. It's a cool little stop. It's worth checking out, and
yeah, definitely. I think it's a really awesome sort of side trip for the day because you're on this long distance cycling trail and suddenly there's a bit of art in the forest, which is not normal. Normally they're in galleries, and I actually would like to see more pieces in here. I feel like this outdoor gallery could be denser with more works, but what is there is awesome. And my background was in visual arts, so I really appreciate seeing this sort of stuff in nature. And you've actually written up as well another walk in this area that's about art.
Yes, the Northcliffe understory art trail, which is in town, so perfect if you're an art lover to come through here and do these 2 trails.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And then moving on from there, it's the downhill into town. Very enjoyable section. There's not too long to go in the day and you can just enjoy some nice cruisy riding, past some farms, through some open plains. and this starts the first of 3 maintenance sections that you look after, Donovan.
Yeah, that's right. So if you leave Swarbrick, you go past this area called Logging Road. Wonder what that was used for. And then you go down the hill past some farmland, and then you take a sharp right. And at that point is the start of my first of 3 Munda Biddi sections, which is section 80 of the Munda Biddi. And this is a section that is very severely eroded due to the storms in July this year.
Yeah, that was fun riding past and being like, I think this is where I was meant to take photos for Donovan.
Yeah, so there's this point where there was a drain that was meant to have water flowing into it, but the water, which comes down the hill and then from the main road itself, so there's 2 points of water runoff, it is basically flowing onto the road and has cut into the road. And I took a photo in February and sent it in and said, this is something that we need to look at. And they said, yeah, it is, but it's not super crucial, which it wasn't. But then the rain in July was so insane, it just has destroyed the road. And last maintenance trip we had to ride on this very skinny section of road that basically could barely fit an X-Trail, just so that we could get to the start of the maintenance section. A bit dangerous, but we got through. And I think that they're going to do some work to repair the road. And we've done what we can to kind of get the runoff directed into the drain, but it's sort of a bigger project than we can do to fix the road.
Certainly cycling through it was a lot easier to navigate. I wouldn't want to do it in a car, but yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
So from there, yeah, it's just downhill into town, some nice areas. Any particular memories apart from wanting to get into the pub here, Brad?
I remember heading south. I basically popped into Walpole, had a quick feed, and then kept going on. But heading north, I remember this was the first town that I realised didn't have any power, and wanted to stay at the pub, and was dreaming about chicken parmigianas and pints of Guinness, and that didn't happen, and it was bucketing down with rain, and the only place that I could really find shelter was across the road near the toilet block and that little awning there. And there was some German backpackers who fed me Haribo and some other last minute treats, and slept underneath there, only to get woken up by a street sweeper at 5:30 in the morning.
Lovely.
That town's it's really interesting. You almost kind of think that it's kind of like the last of the forest before you get into Valley of the Giants and stuff, but it's very different heading north from there, what you experience heading south from there. And especially the way that you leave, you don't really get to see too much of the coast. You kind of get to see the river inlet and stuff like that, but you don't really see the coast until we're further on when you come out of Denmark Scarp. It's like you're right there, you're right on the coast, but you don't quite get to see it.
Yeah.
Still encapsulated in all of those forest areas.
So even coming into town, you cross the Walpole River and you kind of go through that little suburbia bit, but it doesn't actually interact with the inlet too much.
No.
Which I find quite weird.
I mean, I like how it goes through the wetlands. I really, that's probably of this maintenance section is the nicest part. Shared with the Bibblemen, so they do maintenance through here as well. But I do agree that there could be more engagement with the coastline, but there isn't. And you don't really get to see it, as you say, till Denmark, just before Denmark. So, that's probably, a developmental opportunity for the trail, but at the moment it just really doesn't. And it's really just forest, the wetland, you're in town, that's it.
I'm sure for those riders that do end up toning things down and taking their time on the trail, end up staying in that town and experiencing the coastal plains. And it would be awesome to have, I'm sure that there is on the Munda Biddi page of hey, if you stay in this town for the day, make sure you do this. There's 10 things to do.
That's, I think, if you're doing a slow trip where you're using this as a tour of the Southwest, which I think is the best way if you're not from WA to see the area. Stay in town, just park your bike up, go and do some tours. Like, there's various different things you can do here in Walpole that would be awesome to just see the area that the trail doesn't offer, but the trail offers that access point to do these things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because there's the inlet tour on the boat that Gary Muir does. That's quite interesting. I'm sure there's winery tours and everything else from Walpole. But it is a bit of a weird town. Like, I have memories of it being quite nice, but then my stay through here wasn't very fun because 2 of the cafes in town had shut, and that left the Asian fusion place that's there and the pub as really the only places to eat. The motel weirdly shut their restaurant, I think maybe because they couldn't get like backpackers to work in there.
Yeah.
So really options are limited here compared to like a Denmark or an Albany. But I mean, they have a general store, they have a bakery, which is quite nice. So there's enough there if you're riding through and want a resupply or even just a light meal.
I think part of the problems are COVID related, that we don't have the German backpackers. They're the lifeblood of some of these communities sometimes. Yeah, because they stay in town and they end up working for a couple of months, and that means that they can keep the restaurant open because they've got wait staff. But not having that at the moment makes it really difficult to run a restaurant.
The whole Southwest is just impacted by that immensely, and I think it will take some time for most of it to bounce back.
Because it's this weird paradox in that everyone's now spending more time in this area, but then they don't have the staff to actually run these businesses, so not really being catered to. It's kind of weird, but yeah, I mean, Walpole's quite nice. It's a very compact town. You got access to the inlet, quick walk or ride away, and again, there's enough there. I enjoy it. It's kind of like a little time capsule of a 90s holiday town.
Yeah. I feel like unlike, like Denmark or Pemberton, it's not big enough where there's like heaps of things to do in the evening, for example. But there's a lot of awesome places that are very close to this area.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, and while we've got you here, Brad, we're going to ask a few questions that we ask every guest, and then I have a couple very specific questions for you. But to start with, you just want to run through your typical bike packing setup, kind of the bike you have and all the gear that you pack too much into.
So currently, I don't actually own a traditional bikepacking bike. I do swap my bikes quite frequently, and that's due to A, working in a shop, and B, trying to find what is the perfect bike for WA. If you see my tyre collection in my backyard, you'll be horrified, as I've been trying to work out what actually works and what doesn't work. So most of the time I come from a mountain biking background. So if I'm riding all over the place, I do like to see a downhill and attack it quite aggressively, or just relax on it. So bigger tyres are definitely my friend. The last end-to-end I did was a Salsa Timberjack, which is very similar to Serls Karate Monkey. And so that was fitted up with a saddle bag, frame bag, handlebar bag, 2 feed bags, and then just carrying water in a camelback that year. I've got a Curve GMX on the way, which I'm very excited about. Those guys been doing this kind of stuff all over Australia for a very long time and all over the world. And that's going to be basically dirt drop bar 29er running 2.6 inch tyres. So I do prefer the acoustic side of things. I haven't gone on over to the dark side yet.
Just to discuss, I guess, your bikes, how they differ, because I believe you are riding steel bikes.
Yeah.
And what's the rationale behind that choice for people who don't have the experience of riding a steel bike?
Yeah, I guess that started for me working at Wembley Cycles, we're a pretty big high-end store. So whenever you got a new staff bike, you would put it on the scales first time and you'd weigh it, which is great if you're doing a 45k river loop a couple of times a week. But the further you ride and the rougher terrain that you actually ride on, the alley and the carbon basically just make your riding quite harsh. Whereas the steel does a lot of soaking up of those vibrations. It's also a very strong material as well. We have countless riders pre-COVID riding around the world on steel bikes, telling stories of, or you seeing photos of their bikes fully loaded with way too much gear, probably twice as much gear as I would take on a fully loaded trip, and hearing a story of a rack mount breaking off and them going to a Indian service station / tractor repair center and getting their bike welded back together. That's possible with steel, and that's kind of what we love to push, knowing that you can buy a bike and have it last 10, 20 years and get that love out of it, and all those trips. I also find it really, really comfortable as well. I've got bad lower back. I've got to do a lot of work off the bike to be able to do my endurance trips, and falling in love with steel 6 years ago has just made that so much easier for me. The GMX is a mixture of titanium and carbon. So titanium being what we call the magic carpet material. It's got a nice amount of flex. It doesn't lose too much strength to it, and it shaves a bit of weight off of it as well. So yeah, it's kind of like chucking a record on riding a steel bike. It's just got this warmth about it that you're not too sure about, but you ride it for the first time. And I think it's just from a lot of us riding whatever we can kind of come by, and riding a lot of alley bikes, especially if we've started riding in the late 90s, early 2000s. Aluminium was absolutely rife through what we ride normally, and jumping back onto steel's a bit of breath of fresh air.
And I suppose riding through the Alcoa wasteland, you can be on your high horse and say, well, I don't have an aluminium bike.
As we say at work, aluminium's for beer cans.
I'm actually surprised you don't have a steel bike now, Don, because you love your records.
I really love the analogy. As you know, I've got a turntable here. I've got some records here. So yeah. I can relate to what you're saying.
Yeah. And I guess it is a part of appreciating so much stuff as well, like drinking nice wine, drinking nice beer, enjoying a good cup of coffee. And it's things that we want them to last a little bit longer. And that's what that bike kind of means a little bit. You see surly riders that they've been riding, those guys have been making bikes for 22 years. And you see guys that have had the original long haul trucker touring bike, and they've done countless trips and taken it all over the world, and they just basically build a new set of wheels for it, every 25,000 kilometers or something mental like that. And you've still got the soul and everything there, and you get to take it on these awesome trips around the world.
Yeah, Saf from, I think it was Collie to Donnybrook section that we did, really enjoys her steel surly. It seems to be once you're a convert or a fan, you're a fan for life.
Yeah, it's kind of, they're such a weird brand. You hear about all these little stories that goes on in their factories, and you meet the people that work, not their factories, their offices, and meet some of the people that work for them, and you're just like, yeah, I don't want to be this guy in a lab coat chucking a bike into a wind tunnel and working out whether or not my beard's going to give me drag or whatnot. I just want you to work out how to get how much beer you can fit onto a bike and go and have a picnic with your mates.
Yeah. All right, next question is favourite section of the track.
Easily, it's the first one that comes to my mind. Pemberton to Northcliffe. It's so special. It's an easy 50Ks. Well, it's an easy but challenging 50Ks, but it's just filled with so much difference between. It's like a clip of everything that you can experience in the trail. Definitely.
Yeah, I think you've got two people that will agree with you there.
Yeah. And it's almost a shame that Northcliffe to Yurikata Day isn't better, because imagine if like it was 3 days, because I reckon Yurikata to Kwokralat Bila is very close in quality. If it had just been that extra day was also, that would be like the best 3-day stretch of the whole trail.
Oh, totally. Because even heading north out of Pemberton is a bit of, oh, really? It's just main roads and a bit of nothingness, and then especially going through all those logging areas, that it's so refreshing to like get to Pemberton and just get to the heart of WA forest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And while we've got you here, and obviously you're an expert in all things bikepacking, what would be kind of some top tips that you would give people who are looking to do the Munda Biddi?
They're the top tips that I wish someone gave me. Probably my top 3 would be, number 1 would be, you don't need to do the whole thing to experience the Munda Biddi. Doing day trips, driving places, doing little sections, staying somewhere really nice in an Airbnb and then experiencing sections is amazing. Knowing that you can ride from Donnybrook to Northcliffe town to town, and because you don't have all your gear with you, you can actually cover a big distance a lot quicker. And probably my third tip is understand your sleep gear. It's one of the most underrated things that most bike packers go into. We're a sport-based city, if not country, and our bike has to be our be-it end-all. And I find that gear kind of gets pushed to the wayside. Knowing that if you can ride in the rain for 8 hours and you know that it's going to be -2 that night, that your sleep gear is going to keep you warm and you're going to get a good sleep, that means that the next day is going to be better, and the next day is going to be better after that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks very much, Brad, for coming in. If you're looking at either getting some bikepacking experience, some gear, a bike, I know you guys stock some of the top-of-the-line Revelate and Ortlieb gear.
Sadly, Revelate's pretty hard to come by.
I know.
COVID's kind of killed that, but we do a lot of restrap stuff, and we're doing Keaton from Queensland's bike bag dude gear as well.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I did not know this before I bought all my gear, because I just was having such a hard time trying to find stuff. End up going a lot of restrap gear, but I'm kind of bummed I didn't get it from you guys now.
It's all good. All good.
Go and see Brad and the team at Cycles Bespoke out in Bayswater, and they will set you up with everything you need.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Awesome.
Thank
you for coming in.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode or any other episode of Real Trail Talk, then please rate us on whatever platform you're currently listening to us on. Ratings really help us to reach an audience, especially those who are looking to learn about the outdoors in Western Australia and Australia in general. If you had any questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at realtrailtalk@gmail.com or contact us through our social media channels. Thanks again, and stay tuned for our next episode.